The FBI surprised everyone when they raided the home of Rick Harrison, a famous character from the TV show Pawn Stars. What they found wasn't gold or old watches but the secret basement full of strange mysteries. According to the first reports, the basement has encrypted data files, surveillance camera systems, and signs that someone used to live there or was held. These clues have left people confused and have raised many questions. Is this a complex plot that has been going on for a long time, revealed all this time, and could Rick Harrison, who used to be loved by the public, be involved in something darker than we thought? On the other hand, it's possible that this is all a big mistake, or even a plot to bring down a celebrity. The truth is still being investigated. Watch today's video to learn more about the shocking details of this case, where the line between fame and notoriety can change in the blink of an eye. On a carefully timed morning, the FBI conducted a surprise raid on Ree. Within 38 seconds of the front door being broken into, Rick was restrained in the master bedroom on the second floor. He was barely dressed and completely caught off guard. He kept asking to see a lawyer and denying knowing what was going on. But the FBI did not come empty-handed. They had a legal search warrant and a clear list of targets, from electronic devices to financial records to suspected criminals. The look for assets that had not been reported was done quickly. At the same time, 2 other people in the house were arrested and questioned, a woman in her early 30s and an older man dressed as a military officer carrying an unregistered communications device. Interestingly, neither of these men had legal residency in the United States, and they were thought to be supporting players in a complicated scheme that Rick was allegedly involved in. But what really turned the investigation on its head was the shocking discovery of a secret metal door hidden behind a fake bookshelf in the something that wasn't shown on any of the FBI's blueprints or remodeling documents. Rick said he had never seen the door, but the multi-point biometric locking system with retinal scans, fingerprints, and thermal sensors quickly raised suspicions. The system could only recognize one person, Rick Harrison. When asked to help, he reluctantly put his hand on the authentication device. The door opened, leading the agents down a dark spiral staircase to the area below surprised the whole investigation team. It's a space solidly reinforced with concrete and steel, with a separate ventilation system and magnetic locks meeting the standards of high-security facilities. According to initial assessments by technical experts, this space is soundproof and can block electronic waves, which are things that are usually only found in special classified facilities. The investigation has changed from a routine inspection to figuring out what was meant to be built underground. Now the question is, what is really going on behind the friendly TV face that people used to trust? According to an anonymous expert in the field of investigating illegal activities, it is very unusual for a famous person like Rick Harrison to have a basement that was designed with very high security. Soundproofing is even seen as a clear warning sign. These kinds of places have been used in the past for shady things like moving goods, as temporary control points in complex networks, or to store unknown assets. When the agents went into the basement, they found a lot of specialized electronic devices, encrypted documents, and possible signs that the space had been used for strict control. The agents who were there said it could be the start of one of the biggest investigations of their careers. After the raid, the whole house was locked up tight for forensic, digital, and special operations. Teams were sent out to help, and Rick Harrison was taken to a federal detention center without bond while an investigation took place. The first items that were seized were encrypted and categorized, and they included dozens of data storage devices, financial documents, and other strange items. The FBI said that the footage from the internal camera system could shed light on a number of important details and could even change the whole direction of the investigation. When the secret metal door to the basement was found, a special technical team from the Advanced Investigations Division was quickly sent to help. At first, Rick had to prove his identity through the biometric locking system, but the experts were able to get past it with great care. According to FBI policy, any underground structure found in a residential area that doesn't seem to have a clear purpose is thought to be a possible place where dangerous things are kept, like drugs. As a result, the forensic team wears full protective gear and uses biological, chemical, and radiation detectors before going into the basement. Rick's basement is not like any other recreation area or storage room. It's 3,000 square feet, which is about half the size of the first floor, and has three separate areas: a central operations area, a high-security storage area, and an area that is thought to have been used for detention or other close-in situations. All of these details bring up a lot of interesting questions. Is this just a strange coincidence or a key part of a bigger plan? All eyes are now on the ongoing investigation, and the story behind the secret basement will likely get even more shocking in the days to come. The basement was completely empty, with no decorations or windows. The only light came from fluorescent tubes, attached directly to the steel frames in the ceiling, making the space cold. In what looked like a command center, investigators found a series of consoles, each with 2 to 4 monitors, that could be operated separately. There were more than 16 monitors broadcasting live video streams, some of which showed angles from the garage or rooms in the basement. But what caught the investigators' attention were at least 6 monitors, showing footage from unknown locations that didn't match the current house, according to analysts. These pictures may have been taken from off-site locations set up for remote monitoring. Agents also found a system on the console with encryption equipment, a military-grade wireless router, a high-security server, and an electronic safe built into the floor. Inside they found 12 USB drives, 5 solid-state drives, and 2 types of memory cards that are common in surveillance equipment. The data was sent to the Federal Digital Analysis Lab to be decrypted. An investigator said that in a nearby storage area, steel shelves were set up in rows with codes holding hundreds of old hard drives in anti-static packaging. All of the drives had coded labels with numbers like E419K or SLV0923 on them. It's not clear what these numbers meant, but they could have something to do with location, date, or personal identification. The drives were protected by 256-bit AES encryption and biometrics, which made accessing the data time-consuming and high-tech. The area was thought to be used to temporarily store. Experts got chills when they heard about the isolation of the subjects. The small room was made of concrete and was completely soundproofed. It didn't have any natural light or cameras, but it did have its own ventilation system and a lock that could be opened from the outside. In the room they only found a toilet, a bed frame welded to the floor, and a 2 m long iron chain attached to the wall. On the chain they found a worn fabric bracelet that might belong to a young person. Under special lighting, they found what looked like dried blood and hair clumps in a corner of the floor. I've been involved in over 30 investigations involving underground facilities, but I've never seen one that was so precisely and systematically designed. Said a veteran agent, this wasn't the work of a single person acting on impulse. It was the result of a detailed and deliberate plan. The task force came to the conclusion that the underground facility was not only designed to avoid being found, but also for remote operation, the storage of highly sensitive data, and the ability to secretly run the whole system. What remains is a big question that could lead to more shocking discoveries in the years to come. What was found inside the bunker opened up a new line of inquiry that suggests there is a well-organized underground network that may have been run by Rick H.A. building with soundproof rooms, high-security systems, and encryption devices. Raises serious questions about what it was built for. When combined with digital data, financial records, and advanced intelligence gathering tools, the investigation team found that the case may involve a number of serious violations, such as illegal detention, privacy violations, and the ability to hide illegal activity. What's even more shocking is that the person in question is a famous person who is well known. People trust this place, which makes the case more interesting and difficult. If the suspicions are correct, this is not only a suspicious place, but also a symbol of how the public image can be used to hide dishonest behavior. Said Thomas Clean, a criminal law professor at Yale. The search ended at 3 a.m. On the same day, 3D scanning technology was used to record the whole scene and detailed records were made. The evidence was divided into 3 groups. Group A was digital data, Group B was biological samples, and Group C was devices that could be connected to surveillance and control activities. Before leaving the scene, the technical team turned off the basement's electricity and put in anti-intrusion alarms. The investigation has now moved on to Phase 2, which involves finding out where the people involved came from and expanding the investigation. The investigation into the network that may have been going on for years without anyone knowing about it started with a single email. The email was sent to Agent Leah Cortez, who has worked for the FBI in Las Vegas before. The subject line was simple: Pawn Star is not what you think. The email itself was short and awkward, but it did include a blurry photo of Rick Harrison in a bar with an older man wearing dark glasses. The face was quickly recognized as Roman, not only the photo of Zavich, who had been under surveillance for years because of possible ties to international crime rings, caught Cortez's attention, but also the accuracy of the information in the email. The sender, who called himself JM, said he had worked in logistics and seen many suspicious deliveries in a Henderson area, and the description was so detailed that it could be checked. The last line of the email was a chilling message that said, "Look in the basement, and you will see the..." At first, the investigation team was wary because of Rick Harrison's status and reputation. But after 48 hours of initial research and confirmation, the Federal Human Trafficking Unit officially opened a preliminary investigation under strict confidentiality rules. An anonymous email that didn't seem trustworthy set off a chain of events that led to a shocking discovery. This was just the start of the journey to slowly unravel a complex network. The first step in the investigation was to look at Rick Harrison's immigration records. As a foreign trader and collector of antiques, he should have traveled a lot, but the records showed that Rick had never left the United States. In 5 years, no international flights, no immigration stamps, and no private airline activity. But corporate accounts connected to Rick showed a different picture. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were sent to entities in Prague, Bangkok, and Tirana that have been linked. Because the transactions didn't make sense, investigators thought they might have been made through a third party or under a different name. Either way, the transactions could have broken financial controls and led to more scrutiny. The FBI started keeping an eye on Rick's daily activities and saw that he wasn't spending as much time at Pawn Stars and was instead often seen at a number of strange places, such as an empty warehouse in North Las Vegas. There was a luxury apartment that wasn't occupied, and a pawn shop that looked like it was busy at night. Notably, Rick's meetings were always short and never had more than one person at a time. Facial recognition technology showed that some of the people who showed up at these places had ties to criminal groups in Mexico, California, and Florida. One of them was thought to be part of a network that trafficked people. There wasn't enough proof to say for sure that these people were connected to R. The investigation moved on to the financial side when court-ordered data showed that Rick Harrison did more than just run public businesses. He was also the owner or a shareholder in at least 17 limited liability companies (LLCs) in 6 states and 3 countries. Many of them didn't seem to be doing business, with registered offices in mailboxes or empty buildings. One company, Silverside Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands, received more than $3.4 million. During that time, a mysterious name kept showing up in documents related to Eric Lane. This person didn't have any tax records, but he owned several high-end properties near Pawn Star stores that shared the same high-security system. Some of these properties were also licensed for basement renovations, but there were no clear records of what was done. The case took a big turn in late 2022 when Kyle Mason, Rick's former warehouse manager, decided to go public with his claims. To work with the police. Mason did this after being fired for asking about his late-night dealings. He secretly recorded license plate numbers, meeting times, and set up hidden cameras at the warehouse. The information Mason gave was very helpful in getting a search warrant for Rick's main house in Henderson, which is thought to have a hidden basement. At this point, the investigation officially moved into the action phase, with experts from finance, high-tech crime, and tactical task forces join. With the help of data from drones, satellite imagery, 3D models of the mansion, and electrical and plumbing diagrams, the raid was planned down to the last centimeter. The goal was to make sure that no evidence was lost before the task force got there, and when it happened, every step was done with almost perfect accuracy. But what really surprised the investigation team was Rick Harrison's financial system. Harrison is famous for his reality TV show and antiques business. When agents looked into his finances, they found a dense web of a group of limited liability companies, LLCs, that are formed not only in many U.S. states, like Nevada,
Arizona, and Florida. And in countries with strong banking systems, like Panama, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands, Rick supposedly only owned a few companies that dealt in media and antiques. However, when investigators looked through federal databases, they found a total of 17 different companies, most of which didn't have any employees, offices, media operations, or tax filings. One investigator called the scheme a buy, following bank transactions. The FBI found that huge amounts of money were moving between these companies at a rate of 50 to 300 transactions per month. Notably, most of the payments were labeled vaguely, like shipping fees, consulting services, or package B payments. One company that stood out during the investigation was Silverside Holdings, which is based in the Cayman Islands. Over 16 months, the company received more than $3.4 million from. There are reports in Southeast Asia and Eastern Europe that have, after being closely watched for illegal activities, the money was sent to LLCs in the U.S., which were made legitimate through internal contracts, service invoices, and even virtual asset transactions. Daniel Rohr, an international finance expert who has helped the government investigate major cases, said this is a typical example of using shell companies to turn dirty money into clean money, filtered through 3 levels of legal entities abroad and sent back to the U.S. as service fees. It is nearly impossible to find the original source without internal evidence. Rick Harrison's public reputation is also thought to have been used for shady deals. For example, a $270,000 wire transfer from Bangkok to an Arizona company in Rick's name was marked as a private purchase of archaeological artifacts, but there was no record of the artifact legally entering the United States. A document written in both English and Thai with the item described it as a 14th century vase, but experts say that no such vase has ever been shown or sold in a public auction. As part of their investigation, the FBI found a complicated pattern of transactions between companies connected to Rick. Specifically, a US-based company would send money to a company registered in the name of his relatives or friends. The money then kept moving through accounts in places with lax financial regulations. Circular money laundering, which involved sending money to places with strict rules like the Cayman Islands or Panama, and then back to the US as investment capital. This made the money flow look completely legal, with full invoices and documents, but investigators say it was just a paper curtain covering a system of organized illegal activities. In a big break, the FBI found that companies connected to Rick often use services from companies that offer anonymity solutions. For just a few examples, anyone can set up a company and a bank account without having to go to court. This is a great way to stay out of trouble with the law. In fact, the FBI has a list of more than 200 financial transactions involving these kinds of entities, which suggests a well-thought-out plan to hide the identity of the person behind them. Not only did Rick hide the flow of money, he is also said to have invested it in real estate and the stock market while pretending to be a venture capitalist. At least 6 properties were bought with the money. Some were bought cheaply at auctions and then renovated with money from outside the country. Some were left empty after the renovations, while others were used to store electronics, safes, surveillance gear, and other things that weren't known to have a purpose. In particular, an underground tunnel system, similar to the one found at Rick's main home in Nevada, raised suspicions that it may have been used as a secret storage facility or transit point. Legally, these actions could be against a number of federal laws that deal with money laundering. Just looking at the complicated financial system is enough to bring charges, but when you add in the digital evidence and the network of people, it's clear that this is a fully structured organization that handles everything from finance to logistics to human resources, according to New York criminal defense lawyer Mary Jenkins Music. To sum up, what the FBI found wasn't just a few strange transactions or money flows with no clear source. They slowly tracked down a complex financial network that was designed to work, sustainable, operate independently, and are cleverly shielded by the public image of a celebrity. According to experts, this may be the best shell of Rick Harrison, who is not only involved, but also plays a key role in how this whole system works. What surprised many was the quiet but obvious change in Rick Harrison's behavior and lifestyle. He was once seen as a symbol of simplicity, sincerity, and trustworthiness. He loved history and was good at negotiating. With his tight-knit sense of humor, Rick was once an essential part of the hit TV show Pawn Stars. He stands for traditional American values, like hard work, honesty, and family. But behind the scenes, things were slowly changing. According to investigation records and accounts from former co-workers, Rick's life began to change around 2015, when Pawn Stars was at the height of its popularity. With a high-paying job in reality TV, Rick slowly pulled away from public life. He rarely showed up at events, or many people thought he was just trying to protect his privacy. But then strange things started to happen. A former personal assistant who worked with Rick from 2016 to 2018 said he became more secretive and tightly controlled information. He always carried multiple phones, with each one used for a different purpose, like work, family, or special contacts. Rick's office was so closely guarded that no one was allowed to enter without permission. During one breach, he reportedly reacted very harshly, telling employees not to make the same mistake again. In 2017, Rick started making all of his key employees sign new stricter confidentiality agreements. These documents not only limited the sharing of work information, but also banned any mention of relationships or activities outside of work. Many former employees say they were forced to sign on the spot or risk losing their jobs. The public still saw Rick Harrison as the familiar face. Rick was a wise, funny, and TV-like shop owner, but people close to him noticed a big change. He became quieter, angrier, suspicious, and more distant than ever. By 2018, fans started to notice that Rick's son Corey Harrison was slowly disappearing from the show. At the same time, Rick's relationship with his longtime partner Chumlee became strained after a series of public personal events for Chumlee. Although he didn't say anything in public, some behind-the-scenes sources say Rick seemed to become more The show Pawn Stars, which was known for being honest and spontaneous, also changed over time. A producer who worked on the show for 5 seasons said that Rick started to have more control over the content. He asked for reshoots if there were any verbal mistakes, and even suggested removing segments that he thought were bad for his professional image. Some guests who were thought to be too famous to overshadow Rick on the show were also limited in their airtime. Dr. Michelle Tran, a media psychologist, said that these changes could be a sign that someone is under pressure to control their public image. When a celebrity reaches the heights of their fame, they often start to worry about being misunderstood, being watched closely, or losing their status. This can make them overly controlling in their personal and professional lives, and Rick Harrison seems to have been no different. In early 2020, he almost disappeared from public life for 8 months. Many famous people talked about their time in quarantine through live streams or volunteer work. Rick, on the other hand, didn't say a word. He didn't make any posts or public appearances. During this time, Rick hired someone to upgrade his home security system, and the technician said that he asked for thermal cameras, bulletproof glass, and dual biometric locks. When asked why, Rick said, "There are people trying to get in. I'm not letting them in." According to the technician, Rick seemed so careful that it surprised people who have worked with other celebrities. When Rick came back in late 2020, he was very serious and guarded. During a podcast interview, he abruptly ended the conversation and left the studio when asked about a warehouse that was said to belong to him. Soon after, the warehouse became the focus of a major investigation into shady shipping practices. Rick's changes weren't just personal, they seemed to be related to his job. Between 2016 and 2022, every time Rick Harrison stepped away from the media, there was a change in how information was controlled, and there was an internal conflict at the store. At the same time, new companies, strange deals, and less open transactions started to happen. Rick seemed to be changing not just because of the pressure of fame, but to adapt to a more complicated world where everything had to be planned, controlled, and kept secret. Music. Looking back, Rick Harrison's journey of change is a vivid one. No one could have guessed that behind Rick's familiar smile on TV, there were quiet but warning signs of change, unusual anger, and tightening control over every aspect of the show, while viewers were still focused on watching the exciting negotiations. Another world may have been slowly taking shape behind the scenes, according to some sources and media psychologists' analysis. Rick's behavior change is a form of deep defense, where control becomes a protective shell. If the tight control only applied to their personal image, it might not have been noticed. But there are many signs and reports from observers that things may be much more complicated. Pawn Stars is the public face of a sophisticated network. For almost 20 years, Pawn Stars has been more than just an entertaining TV show. It has become an icon of modern American culture. But its popularity and credibility have led many to wonder if it could be the perfect cover for illegal investigations. Some studies have suggested that the show has been used to dilute public opinion and make shady deals possible. One of the most interesting pieces of information comes from the special guests who come to the store with antiques but act in ways that seem odd when watched on TV. For example, in a 2018 episode, a man named DH brought in an early 20th century camera. When viewers looked more closely, they saw what looked like a secretly placed There was no official confirmation of what the object was, but the act caused a lot of speculation, especially since there had been recent reports of disappearances in Europe. Dr. Elaine Redmond, a media crime analyst, once said that Rick Harrison's use of Pawn Stars as a two-way communication channel was one of the most sophisticated media strategies she had ever seen. She said that the TV show isn't just a place to share historical information through. Not only is Pawn Stars a great place to look at antiques, but it's also a great place to send out subtle signals without getting caught. A look at a certain item, or a statement that seems normal, can all be signs of an action or transaction going on behind the scenes, as Ms. Redmond explained in her analysis. Dr. Redmond said that this is a great example of how people can use their fame and media platforms to build an image while hiding their less than suspicious activities. Rick Harrison is a reliable narrator and a carefully crafted character on screen. He has always come across as a friendly, knowledgeable man who is always willing to share what he knows. This image has been reinforced by hundreds of episodes and public appearances. When he hears rumors, he just smiles and says, "I'm just a used goods salesman." For many, that's enough of an explanation. But investigators have looked closely at sponsorship deals and contracts related to the show, and have found a number of suspicious payments made to Rick's LLC. According to some reports, these payments came from unknown middlemen, who were later thought to be shell companies with ties to shady financial networks. Former producers have also said that the show's central role in shaping its image and controlling information has been criticized. 3 former members of the editing and screening of guests were closely watched to make sure everything went as planned. "No one was allowed to deviate from the script," said one producer. "At the time we thought it was just a way to maintain quality content, but looking back it seems like it was calculated to avoid any element of suspicion." In a statement, federal prosecutor Mark Hidalgo said that if there was evidence that a popular TV show was used to support illegal activities, the problem would go away. "This is mass media manipulation, a form of perception control on a grand scale," he said. And Pawn Stars was the key card in that game. Pawn Stars built Rick Harrison's reputation and created the perfect cover for any doubts, as people knew and liked him as a musician. If the story of Rick Harrison and Pawn Stars is true, it could be one of the most interesting in modern media history. It raises deep questions about trust, reputation, and the ability to hide the truth.